guys, welcome back to my channel. This video is going to be a lot different than what I normally do. This is going to be about Christopher Watts, the man that lived in Frederick, Colorado, that killed his entire family to be with his mistress, Nicole Kessinger. I'm sure all of you probably know about this case. When this happened, I was literally like so obsessed with it, like trying to figure out why he'd done it. It just didn't make sense to me. This man that seemed like a perfect husband, a perfect father, just killed his whole family. There was no signs that he was capable of this, and the only motive he had was that he had a mistress. A lot of people have mistresses and they cheat and they do not kill their entire family. So this did not make sense to me back when it was going on. I remember when it first happened, I remember seeing the video of him out on his front porch talking about how he missed his family and how if you have my wife or kids, please bring them back. But there was no emotion on his face when he begged for his family back. That struck me very odd. I remember seeing that video and thinking, he doesn't seem sincere. Like, he doesn't seem like he really is missing his family or that he's concerned about their whereabouts. It just seems very odd. So there's a book coming out. It's called Letters from Christopher. The lady that wrote this book, her name is Cheryln Cadle. If you see me looking this way, it's because I'm looking at my notes, you guys. I do not have the book yet, but I'm going to get the book. So a lady by the name of Cheryln Cadle, she reached out to Chris. I think she had to write him like 3 different times before he finally wrote her back. She has written before, but she was not really an author. She has not written any books before, but she has done some writing in her time. I did watch her do an interview where she said that she also saw the interview where Chris was on the front porch where he was, you know, asking, if you have my children, bring them back. If you have my family, bring them back. It's so lonely in this house. And she said it struck her odd and she just felt compelled to reach out to him once she heard that he was arrested for their murder. So if you guys remember, when everything took place, he was a suspect right off the bat because of his actions. Shanann's best friend, Nicole, actually is the reason everything fell apart. I believe if Nicole, her best friend, had not alerted the police and went to the house, things may not have played out the way that they did. I believe that Chris really had other intentions on how to cover this up and hide this. I mean, he just didn't have time to do those things. He didn't have time to follow through with all of his plans to try to cover these murders up. Had Nicole, Shanann's best friend, not contacted the police, he would have had more time to get rid of evidence, to do whatever he may have had in mind. Because I 100% believe that he was going to blow up the battery tanks, that's why he brought the gas, that he actually planned on having Shanann's car drove there and placing her body back in it and blowing it up to where it looked like she committed suicide with the 2 girls. That's my theory. I could be wrong. Okay, so the book just came out, you guys, and I've been reading a lot of articles about it. I've been watching YouTube videos about it. Like I said, I don't have the book, but I plan on getting the book. And so far, the things that I have read that are in this book are just horrendous. They're horrible. Chris admits to killing the girls or attempting to kill the girls before. He admits that he planned this for weeks. He even at one point talks about how his initial plan was to kill Shanann and then later on get rid of the girls somehow. He talks about how he slipped oxycodone into Shanann's whatever. He gave it to her. She went to visit the family. She was there for like 5 weeks. He went like the last week. And when he went, he gave her the oxycodone, hoping that it would cause her to miscarry. He said that he felt like if Shanann was not pregnant, it would be easier for him to leave her. So I have some notes. So if you see me looking this way, it's because I'm actually reading my notes. This video may be a little bit longer than normal, but it's just because I want to give you guys the details that I have come across about this book that has come out. So in these letters, he confessed to murdering Bella, who was 4, Celeste, who was 3, twice. He actually confessed to murdering them twice in the letters, which obviously you cannot murder someone twice. But what he means by that is the night that he tucked them in, he knew what was coming the next day. Like I said, in these letters, he admitted to planning this out. So when he tucked his babies in bed the night before, he said he walked out of their rooms thinking, that's the last time I'm ever going to tuck my babies in. So the next morning he woke up, he goes and he makes his lunch, and then he goes in each of their rooms. So he goes in Bella's room, he goes in Celeste's room, and he takes a pillow off their bed and he holds it over their face, which suffocates them. He says their body goes limp. He assumes that they're passed. So he then goes into his room and lays back down with his wife Shanann, where he wakes her up. They talk, and then they get into the argument. During the argument was when he did strangle her. He even talked about how he knew to press on her jugular because it would cut off the airflow, the blood flow to her brain. So he said after Shanann had passed, Bella and Cece woke back up, and he says he's not sure how they woke back up, but they did. He talks about how Bella's eyes were bruised and both girls look like they had been through trauma, which is, I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine. Like, reading that just made me think about those girls running into their parents' rooms, scared, not knowing what happened, and just their eyes being bruised and bloodshot because their dad had literally just tried to kill them. He says that made the act much worse, knowing I went to their rooms first and knowing I still took their lives at the location of the batteries. Now, the lady that wrote this book, she bites no bones. She says she's not there or doing this book to try to make Chris out to be some great person. She says she's just trying to tell the story. She was upfront with Chris to tell him that she thinks he is exactly where he needs to be, that he was wrong in what he done, and she is on the side with the victims, but she just wanted to put the truth out there. And she said, she's putting it out there, what he wrote to her in the letters, and people can believe it or not believe it, that it's really just up to us to decide whether or not we believe what he says happened. So Chris also admits to concealing other facts from the authorities that he would not talk about in phone calls. He said that he was always worried that his phone calls were being recorded. So he made sure he didn't say anything that he wanted that would be leaked, possibly be leaked. Also, he says that the reason he didn't admit some of these things in his jailhouse interview a couple months back was because he said they just surprised him. So he didn't really have time to kind of figure out what he was going to say or how he was going to go about telling the truth in that interview, which was why he still withheld certain information. He also said that there will be some things that he takes to his grave with him, like who gave him the oxycodone. He says that he will take that to his grave. So in my mind, I automatically go to Nicole Kessinger. Like, that's who gave it to him. He also talks about how Nicole Kessinger had a dark force around her, and that they done weird things in the apartment, that it was just weird, and she had this dark force around her. He talks about how he is now a Christian. He's found Jesus. He's this godly man. The author of the book did say that he could literally quote any scripture like that off the top of his head while they were talking. Like, if he wanted to bring up something in the Bible and reference the Bible to what he was saying, he automatically knew what book, what verse, everything right off the top of his head. And that was one of the things that the author had to agree to. When she reached out to Chris about writing this book about him, he agreed to it, but only if she would talk about him finding God and how he now has peace and he feels like he's been forgiven. And basically, it would be like a redemption type story for him. They had a written agreement that she would cover certain things as far as talking about him and who he is now, today. And if she covered those things, she could publish the book. So I'm assuming that she did do those things for him. Chris previously claimed in the first interview that it was a spontaneous outburst of rage that led him to kill his wife, who was 15 weeks pregnant with Nico, and then his daughter so he could be with his mistress of 2 months. So this has always been said that their relationship was very short, 2 months. However, Nicole Kessinger literally Google searched Shanann Watts the year previous. I think it was September 2017 or something like that she actually Googled Shanann Watts. So that was something that was really confusing if they had only been in a relationship for 2 months. She also told detectives, Nicole Kessinger, the mistress, that she did not know that Chris Watts was married at first, that he didn't tell her that. Now, Chris says that she knew from jump and that he thinks the reason she did not admit that is because she didn't want to be labeled like a home wrecker right off the bat, that she wanted to at least say, well, I didn't know until I fell for him type of thing. And then it was kind of too late. So even though Chris actually said in his In the first interview, he said that he killed Shanann. She killed the kids. Then in his second interview, he said that he killed all 3 of them. And then in the letters to the author, he admits that he plotted the murders for some time. He said, August 12th, when I was finishing putting the kids to bed, I walked away and said, that's the last time I'm going to be tucking my babies in. I knew what was going to happen the day before, and I did nothing to stop it. He also confessed to slipping oxycodone onto his wife, hoping that it would induce a miscarriage. He said he thought it would be easier to be with Nicole if Shanann wasn't pregnant. Also, Nicole claims that she did not know that Shanann was pregnant until the reports came out that she was missing and that she was pregnant. That before that, she had no idea. Now, Watts actually could have been given the death penalty. However, Shanann's family, the Ruseks, they asked the prosecutor not to seek the death penalty because they felt like it was not their right to take another life, even though he had taken 4 lives of their family members. Their granddaughters, grandson, and their daughter. Shanann's mom said that that was not up to her, that was up to God. So he turned down lots of interview requests, hundreds of letters, asking him to do interviews. He appeared to respond to Mrs. Cadle's request. Like I said, if it could kind of be like his story of redemption. This is something that Mrs. Cadle actually wrote to Chris in one of her first letters. She said, let me just say the crime was so horrific. I'm not writing you to tell you how wonderful you are or that I want to be pen pals. So that was in her first letter that she wrote in February. Mrs. Cadle is a 65-year-old grandmother from Northern Illinois. She wrote him 3 times before he finally responded. She visited him on 3 different occasions. All 3 visits were 5 hours, so she spent a total of 15 hours with Chris. She did speak to his family members on the phone a couple times, but she said that once the mother and sister realized that she was not going to do what they wanted her to do, and that this book was going to go according to the way that she felt that it needed to go, that they were not going to control any aspect of the book, that they refused to talk to her, and they pretty much didn't like her past that point. She said that she did try to get in touch with Nicole Kessinger, but there was no way to. She said she looked for her, tried to find her, and never could find Nicole. She said she also did try to reach out to the Ruseks, but they didn't respond either. And she said she respected their privacy, that if they didn't wish to be a part of this, she understood that. So since March, she had spoke with him on the phone 3 times a week. She did, however, talk about how the further along the book came, the more brief their conversation became. So it would go from 3 times a week for a while, and then it went down to twice a week, and then it went down to once a week. And right before this book's release, she said it had been like 2 weeks since she had spoke to him. She said that after meeting Chris in person, he finally allowed her to use the letters for the first book, Letters from Christopher, The Tragic Confession of the Watts Family Murders. Now it says here first book, so I'm assuming maybe there'll be a second book. I'm not sure, but that's just what it says here. He agreed to do the book in exchange for Cadle's promise that she would publish his testimony of coming to God and the forgiveness he received. Through his letters, he says that he wants to squash any lingering doubt that Shanann was responsible for the daughter's murders, even though he did accuse her of that in his initial interview. He says it was not her, it was him. He does talk about how his family has a hard time accepting that. He says that he thinks that his parents still hold on to the belief that it was Shanann and not him that killed the girls. So following the shocking letter about his daughters, the author said that she was left with many questions, which Watts did answer in a later conversation. He described how he killed his wife in detail, and also recalls how she looked moments before her death, as he told her that he wanted a separation and he no longer loved her. So in one of his letters, Chris says, "Isn't it weird how I look back and what I remember so much is her face getting all black with streaks of mascara. All the weeks of me thinking about killing her, and now I was faced with it. When she started getting drowsy, I somehow knew how to squeeze the jugular vein until it cuts off the blood flow to her brain, and then she passes out. I knew if I took my hands off her, she would still keep me from Nikki. They asked me, why didn't she fight back? It's because she couldn't fight back. Her eyes filled with blood as she looked at me, and she died. I knew she was gone when she relieved herself." So he literally just takes it step by step, talking about how he murdered his wife, the look on her face. I remember them asking, like, she didn't fight back, and him saying, no, she didn't. You know, it was almost like he was as confused as they were as to why she didn't fight back, but he's saying here that she couldn't fight back. He also talked about how he was surprised when his daughters come walking into the room while he was wrapping Shanann in a bed sheet, and began asking what was wrong with their mom. He told them that their mom just wasn't feeling well. And like I said, he had already thought that he killed them because he went into their room and placed pillows over their faces until like their bodies went limp. He thought they were dead. And then they come running in or walking in as he's wrapping their mom up. He talks about how he tried to carry Shanann's body downstairs, but she was too heavy and he lost grip. He ended up dragging her down the steps and then bundled her in the back of his truck. He told the author that the girls just kept running around the house and watched me with scared looks on her face. Bella started to cry, and when she did, Celeste started whimpering. What a nightmare this was. Those are his words. The girls were just kind of running around the house and watching me with scared looks on their face. Bella started to cry, and when she did, Celeste started whimpering. What a nightmare this was. I can't even imagine, you guys. I cannot even imagine. So he later talked about, in his letters, how now he realizes that the girl's getting back up and walking around. He feels like that was an attempt from God to try to get him to stop, for him to realize that he didn't need to do this. He says that when he saw the girls come in the room, that he actually got so mad that they were still alive. He drove his wife's body, her face and feet wrapped in garbage bags, and his 2 daughters to the oil field that was owned by his employer, Anadarko. He said he packed his lunch, a shovel, and a rake along with a gas can, which leads me to believe that he had plans on possibly blowing the place up. And that actually is what led the FBI to think that maybe he was considering suicide, which at first he did say that he was, but now he says that actually that was never the plan. The FBI asked me if I was going to take my own life, and I told them I thought about it, but honestly, no. I was not going to take my own life, is what he wrote to Cadle in the book, the author. He said he took him about an hour to drive to the site where he methodically killed both of his daughters. He said he dumped Shanann on the ground and then walked back to the truck, and with the blanket that Celeste was holding, I put it over her head and I smothered her. He said that he squeezed Celeste's body through an 8-inch hatch in one of the oil tankers. These are his words. I couldn't believe how easy it was to just drop her through the hole and let her go. I heard the splash when she hit the oil. And then he talked about what it was like to kill his daughter Bella after she watched him kill Cece. He says that he was surprised because she actually had a will to live. She actually kind of fought back. Out of all 3, Bella is the one that actually put up a fight. I will hear her soft little voice for the rest of my life saying, "Daddy, no." She knew what I was doing to her. She may not have understood death, but she knew I was killing her. He told investigators several times that, you know, the girls were not alive when he put them in the oil tanks, and that he didn't intentionally separate their bodies. It was just, he said that he had no control over what he was doing, really, and he did not separate everyone purposely, that it just happened that way. And in the letters to Mrs. Cadle, he said, I had to put the girls in the tanks so they wouldn't get up a second time. He then went back to talking about how he buried his wife in a shallow grave. He said, when I dug the hole, it seemed a lot deeper than it was. He talked about how when he rolled her out of the sheet into the hole, she had given birth, and he was mad that she actually landed face down. He said, I remember being so angry with her that I was not even going to change the way she landed. So she landed face down. It made him mad, and he was like, I'm not even going to fix her upright. But he does talk about how she gave birth, and the autopsy actually did confirm that her amniotic sac containing the fetus was protruding from her vagina. Shanann's cause of death was ruled as strangulation, and the 2 girls were smothering. Reports actually noted that Bella and Cece had crude oil in their throats, stomach, and lungs after spending days in the tanks, which would lead me to believe if they have oil in their stomachs and lungs, that they must have been alive, maybe. I mean, that's what I would think. So following the murders and disposing of the bodies, Watts actually searched Google for the lyrics of the Metallica song Battery. The lyrics include the lines, lunacy has found me, cannot stop the battery, Pounding out aggression turns into obsession. Cannot kill the battery. Cannot kill the family. Cadle asked him about the claims that Watts gave, Shanann oxycodone. Like I said, he responded with conflicting stories, saying that he had given it to her once and then given it to her twice. But his intentions on giving her the oxycodone was to cause her to miscarry. When she asked him where he got the oxy, he told me that that's one of the things that he will take to his death. A few hours after he buried his family, Watts' alibi began to fall apart. He gave that awkward TV interview where everybody could tell that just something wasn't right. I remember Dr. Phil watched that interview, and even he watched it saying, like, no, something's just off here. This is not a dad that is pleading for his family back. I also remember the surveillance footage from the neighbor's house, and where Watts and the cop and the neighbor was in the neighbor's living room watching the footage, and it was completely obvious that Watts was scared out of his mind. He was sweating like he didn't know what to do. He didn't want to watch it. He had his hands on his head, swaying back and forth. It was just obvious that he was terrified at that moment that something would be caught on that footage that could prove that he left that house with those girls. Because he knew at the time that those girls left with him. I watched countless YouTube videos of that footage, and you can actually see one of the girls running up to him. You can see their shadow on the ground, and you can see his shadow approach, pick the girl up, and then he puts her in the truck. So at that point, he probably was not 1,000% sure that she was not on that footage. He probably didn't know for sure if you could see her little feet running, or if when he picked her up and turned, if it somehow caught, him carrying her. He didn't know, so he was terrified to even watch it, and most of the time he didn't watch it. Which that there was odd too, the fact that he wouldn't watch the footage, that he was trying not to watch it. Because if my family come up missing and my neighbors had footage of, them possibly leaving the house, I would be all eyes on that footage to see if I saw anything that didn't make sense. Christopher took the polygraph test. He failed it miserably after talking to his dad, Ronnie, and he admitted to killing Shanann. He finally told the investigators that he killed her, and he said it was the investigators that actually put it in his head to say that Shanann killed the girls. He said had they not brought that up, he would have never have thought to blame it on Shanann. So following the murders, Kessinger actually went to the cops willingly, on her own free will, and spoke with the police, admitted to the affair. However, I did later find out that about 2 hours before Nicole went to the police station, her boss at Anadarko had actually contacted the police and let them know that they had reason to believe that Nicole and Chris Watts was involved in a relationship because of the emails. So once everything happened, the boss at Anadarko actually went through Chris's emails, his work emails, and found emails between him and Nicole Kessinger. So when he found those emails, he contacted the police and said, I think they're having an affair, and I'm going to send you guys what I have as soon as it's approved by our legal team. So 2 hours later, Nicole Kessinger shows up at the police station to admit that she's had an affair with Chris Watts. Some people tend to believe that it was because she found out that the cops already knew, so she wanted to make it out like she was willing to help with this investigation and that she wanted to be truthful and forthcoming with them about everything, which she wasn't. There was a lot of things in her testimony that didn't make sense. The way she refused to give them the information about her friend Jim didn't make sense. There was just a lot of things to me with Nicole that didn't make sense and didn't add up. So she done her interview with the investigators. She talked about when they supposedly started fooling around. She talked about the relationship, when it becomes sexual. She claims that Watts told her that his marriage was over and didn't mention his daughters or the fact that his wife was pregnant with their third child. And like I said, I don't know how much of her testimony I believe. It has been said that Nicole Kessinger went into witness protection, but I also read that she actually didn't, that she did not go into witness protection, but she did, however, change her name and possibly change her looks, and she relocated. Chris actually believes that Nicole writes him under an alias, Laurel, and the lady claims to be from Hawaii. A lot of the letters that this Laurel lady has written, it talks about banana bread, it talks about a certain style of music. It talks about football. A lot of things that leads Chris to believe that this is actually Nicole Kessinger writing him under the alias Laurel. So yeah, you guys. Also, Nicole Kessinger looked up stuff about Amber Fry, how much money she made off her book. People hating Amber Fry. Amber Fry was the mistress to Scott Peterson, who killed his wife Lacey while she was pregnant. I just wanted to get on here and give you guys like some of the details that I'm reading about from this book. I've not read the book yet. I've just read so many articles and watched YouTube videos about the things being released in this book. However, I'm going to get the book, and I think when I get the book, I may just go chapter by chapter with you guys. Obviously, I can't read everything in the book because it's not my material, but I would like to get the book and read chapter by chapter and give you guys like the strong points of things that happened that maybe we didn't hear about to begin with. Like, we did not know that he planned this weeks in advance. We did not know that he tried to kill the girls before he killed Shanann. There was a lot of things that in this book we do not know about until now. So that's what my plan is going to be, you guys. If you are into this and you would like for me to do this, make sure you put that in the comment section below. Let me know. This is like a totally different thing for me to cover Chris Watts, but it was something that I was literally obsessed with when everything took place. There was probably not one video on YouTube about Chris Watts that I did not watch, just because, like I said, I didn't understand it. He had everything he could have dreamed of. He had a beautiful wife, beautiful kids, a son, you know, so he was going to have daughters and a son. He had this nice home. It seemed like he was living the American dream, but yet he just done away with it for a mistress. It just didn't make sense to me. So what do you guys think about this? What do you guys think about the information that is coming out in this book? Do you guys believe it? Is it to the point now to where you're not going to believe anything that Chris says? What do you guys think about him finding religion? Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. And until next time, I'll see you guys later. Goodbye, everyone.